if you don't mind, Jeff, if you could in Discord.
Christian, is yours all set?
What's up? I'm good to go. You guys can go. I'm recording. Right. I am looking good.
All right, sounds good.
You guys can play.
What were you saying, Christian?
If you want to just like ping like Reese or Nate or whatever and tell them like Grand Finals is starting, feel free to do that.
Yeah, just in general.
Yeah, or in the that's fine. Just people who we weren't in here. All right, so we have Fiora Tarek versus Fiora Shen. This is a very interesting matchup. Because while I do think that Fiora Tarek is a stronger deck, the Fiora Shen list has better followers. It kind of has a better late game. And so you're looking at Ryan. Ryan hit a pretty good curve. He has his Gift Giver, he has his Fiora Tarek, and he has his Zenith Blade. What he is missing is he's missing his combat tricks to keep Fiora alive. Lucas, because he's a good player, draws into Fiora before 3, just because that's a thing he does. And so both players on 4 are going to have Fiora and their potential supports.
We speak with Blaze.
So if you're Ryan here, playing Fiora is a gamble. Because if he did have something to buff it up a little bit more, it'd be pretty significant. And looking at Ryan's hand, he does have the option here to single. If he single combats this Fiora into the other Fiora, it puts them both behind. But Lucas getting off the first Fiora proc, feeling pretty good about himself here. If you're Lucas, you probably need to keep a barrier up. Ryan immediately going for the Zenith Blade. It's pretty good here. Again, Lucas is thinking probably going to just wait for combat.
Enter, traveler, and stop staring.
So the mentor's going to put Fiora up to 4-7. So the Riposte isn't going to be able to actually take out the Fiora, but it is going to put a lot of pressure on it. And I think if you're Luke, you definitely have to take that. The other hard part about this is Fiora is already quite big. This is a 6-7 Fiora with permanent buffs. Also, because Ryan didn't pull the Fiora, he got a free kill, which puts him in riposte range, or riposte range. So at this point, like, Lucas could pre-commit. Oh, I'm not streaming. That's right. 1 second. Let me stream. Let me share my screen and let me... Sorry, Jeff. You are good to go. And if you want to talk, Jeff, you are more than welcome to.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was like, this sounds really exciting, but I can't see any of it.
So you should be able to see both players' hands now.
Yep, got it.
So again, there's this weird spot where Lucas is very okay just taking damage here. He has lots of reactivity, and he's also got more procs on his Fiora. The hard part is, if Ryan gems this Fiora all the way back up to 7, it's going to be hard. He's going to be in a good spot to just keep it safe and healthy. At this point, double gem makes sense. I think Ryan's probably going to be wanting to keep 3 mana for next turn. Next turn being turn 6, he's going to have 9 mana. So he does have enough mana for Tarek and then the Blessings of Targon. But it looks like he's going in for... Oh, he's thinking about the single combat. He's thinking really hard about this single combat.
How many procs does he have on his Fiora right now?
He's got 0. If you look at his Fiora has killed 0 enemies.
Gotcha.
Lucas doesn't really have any forced combat spells, as single combat was banned for him. He does have access to Concerted Strike, but it's nowhere to be seen. So if you're Lucas, again, everything's about this Fiora. It's all about keeping Fiora alive. And right now, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4 ways of keeping it alive, and 1 way of potentially getting up a little bit higher. Ryan's got this alternate win condition, however. He's got this overwhelmed damage running for him. I don't know if developing into the dragon's the right thing to do here. Grabbing something. Look, Ryan's probably... I would probably grab the 2-1 here. You could also grab the Shen and feel pretty safe about doing so. But instead, he's looking at the Fiora.
Interesting. I probably would have grabbed the 2-1 to try to just keep proccing Fiora, but...
At the same time...
It's hard.
Yeah, his Fiora's got 0. It's 0 out of 4.
Yeah.
Also,
That's true.
that is a huge misplay. Gemming twice is a crazy high misplay. You definitely want to keep mana for single combat if you're Ryan. Because at this point, Lucas is very free to just shield up and heal up some of this damage. A Spirit's Refuge, without fear of it being popped and losing Fiora, is massive. If you're Ryan, this single combat has so much value because it can pop shields. Especially with
and you have to assume when you're playing against a Fiora deck that they've got stuff to shield and protect the Fiora.
Right. And so when you completely tap out of everything, at this point Lucas just has to deal with the board state. So the riposte makes the most sense. It brings the Fiora down low, and it actually opens up the for a potential Fiora kill next turn with the Shen. So Ryan's got nothing. He just has to let combat go through. Again, you want to keep mana for these tricks. So next turn, looking at Concerted Strike single combat is going to be important. But then Lucas just also drew into his Concerted, which is kind of the counter to that. At this point, like, yeah, Lucas is at 4 health, but he also has all of the tools, all of the combat tricks, and all the priority. So if he open attacks here, Ryan has to play something into him. Especially in a Fiora matchup, reactivity is so important. It's so important. It's everything. Because right now, this Fiora is threatening Ryan's basically win condition. So Blessings of Targon is okay here. But again, it's only delaying. The hard part, Lucas, he does have mana for single combat. So let's say Lucas puts him on single combat. He's still protected by a barrier. So Lucas puts him up to the bare minimum that he needs to get through this. And he's also got mana for Concerted. So again, Ryan's combat trick has to come out first, and Lucas's counters it. At this point, Lucas feels like he's in a pretty good spot. Yep, so single combating, that's like the one thing that he was trying to do. Like, that's kind of his only out here, but because of the way he played the last 2 matches, the Concerted Strike just wins Lucas the game. The Fiora hits first.
He'll get his 2 procs.
Yep, he gets his 2 procs here. He's shielded throughout the entire thing, and game 1 goes to Lucas.
Truly a tragedy.
It is a really tricky matchup. I think some of the things that Ryan could have done better is he could have played a lot more reactively, and there was a couple situations where he tapped under any kind of response, which just allowed Lucas to make some pretty aggressive plays. There's a couple misplays too, like you saw Ryan forget to drag the Fiora, allowing his mentor to get blocked for free. That was just a pretty big misplay. And ever since that happened, like, value and equity just swung into Lucas's corner, and he was unable to recover.
Yeah,
Oh, wow. That Fiora was getting too big.
Yeah, it's okay. A nice little mouse slip not grabbing your Fiora when I have the Tarek out.
Yeah.
Or Mentor out. Feels bad. All right.
I'll play my Aesol Chindamere deck.
The peak.
Okay.
The peak. The peak.
Sounds good. Bye.
Alright.
All right, looking into game 2, we do have Targon's Peak coming out. Ryan kind of figuring out what he wants to play. If you're Ryan here, you could go Fiora Shen again. Or you could go Tarek Fiora, which he elects to do. I think that's probably what I would have brought. Just because a lot of his other lists just completely fold to it. Especially if he gets a very large They Who Endure out. So Lucas needs to mulligan very aggressively for Targon's Peak. He doesn't find Targon's Peak, but he does find Divergent Paths, which is basically drawing Targon's Peak for 3 extra mana.
Mm-hmm. And so what's Lucas's like ultimate end goal with Targon's Peak?
So with Targon's Peak being a card that it discounts 1 card in your hand to 0, his goal is going to be stalling to getting out Targon's Peak and then playing the biggest possible units for 0 mana. If you can get a She Who Wanders down on turn 6, that's pretty oppressive. Because 1, it's getting rid of all followers, and 2, it's a 10/10 body with regeneration.
Yeah.
The trick with it, though, is you also want to empty your hand leading up to Targon's Peak coming down. Because it would be a huge bummer if you dropped your Targon's Peak and it discounted something like Behold the Infinite.
Right. Yeah.
So what Ryan's
This is a
gonna
deck that I haven't experienced very much, so I was just wondering.
No,
it's
you're
kind of
good.
like a mid game deck. Then he's just got to weather till turn 6 or 7, then start pushing.
Yep. So you'll see here he's going to draw Targon's Peak with that card. Targon's Peak for 5 mana again. At round start, reduce the cost of a random card in both players' hands to 0.
Yep.
So we haven't talked about Ryan's cards at all right now. Ryan's actually kind of in a spot where he could respond to it. What's hard about Targon's Peak is you do have to weather a little bit, and especially because Lucas's early game unit went down, he doesn't really have a lot of stuff to do. He's gonna have to play some cards to empty his hand, but at the same time, he doesn't want to give too much to Ryan. So that Equinox is pretty prime. Equinox can silence the Mentor. He knows the Mentor is coming down soon, and so this card completely turns this 3 mana that's going to give +2 in gems. It turns it into a 1 mana card.
Yep.
So Lucas is fine. He wants to get Targon Peak down, and then he's got a 50-50 shot of getting a big card, or I guess it's more favorable that he's going to get a bigger card. He could low roll and hit the Sentry or the Messenger. And unfortunately, he hits the Messenger. Oof. But the hardest thing about this is he doesn't really want to play that card and get it out of his hand because it's a free Fiora proc.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's unfortunate they just got the Messenger and that other 2 mana, like 2/1 guy, just because you don't want to feed Fiora.
What's nice for Lucas is looking at Ryan's hand. Ryan's got a lot of buffs. He's got a lot of things to keep Fiora safe. He doesn't have a lot of forced combat. Combat's only going to be able to happen on Ryan's turn. So yep, he waits again. Hitting the It That Stares is okay. It only does 2 damage to all other units. And so at the same time, you're wondering, is it worth it? Because you could knock Fiora down to, at this point, back down to 9 after it's going to get this 2+ buff. But it might be a little too late. Interesting. So he does go for the riposte, trying to just push damage, it looks like. Oh, okay. So at this point, Ryan's saying, I'm going to just end the game. Because this puts Lucas down to 1. So playing It That Stares makes a lot of sense. It clears 1 unit. Ooh, wait. Okay, that doesn't do anything. That was a 2 mana do nothing. With a unit like that has a skill, if a unit has a skill, it's gonna regardless get that skill off. Guiding Touch is huge here. He definitely wants to play that. Invoking would be great too, because if you can invoke something big, Comet is massive here. That's a massive hit. He didn't take it though. I'm really surprised by that. can't imagine you would not take Comet here. At the same time, Ryan does have a Bastion in hand. Like, he's got Bastion, he has a spell shield, he's got a barrier, and he's got health buffs.
Storm will rule the skies.
Will these gems help me on my journey?
I certainly hope so, cousin.
So here's the thing. Lucas wants him to develop the board more. Playing this is good because she who wanders is going to obliterate that. And so it's like in this weird spot where, like, at this point, I wonder why he didn't block with Fiora here. Blocking Fiora into that, I feel like, would just get a free level up. Maybe he was worried about Hush.
These were from the protector himself.
Yeah, I wonder if he was nervous about some sort of counter.
But even still, even with let's say he hushes him, Ryan had the response. He had Riposte, he had the Sunblessed Vigor, he had Bastion. He has all these cards in hand. At that point, I'm wondering, can you be that worried about Hush? Are you allowed to be?
Is this the deck that Ryan saw the first time that he and Lucas played?
That's a great question. I don't think so. We could ask them after the match, but I do not believe that he played this card. Second Targon's Peaks, it's okay. The hard part is, like I said, the danger in doing that is that was the card that got discounted. And so playing 2 Targon's Peaks will make 2 cards in both players' hand go to 0. There is a chance that it hits the same card twice, though.
Looking into the future, I see.
So Lucas has 2 pretty big blockers. You can't really kill anything with Fiora right now. At this point, he can't really threaten too much damage either. He's deciding to swing in, though. So for this attack, probably pull the 8/8 with Fiora, and then look to potentially repost the she who wanders.
I'm curious to see like what his game plan is here, why he's going all in like this.
Counter and strike.
Yeah, so it's a pretty big no-no. Any kind of burst speed combat trick, playing pre-combat makes 0 sense. It's always better to respond to it after you see how people are going to block, even if it does threaten it. Because at that point, if you still had Riposte in hand, even though you're getting a kill on Fiora, getting rid of the 10/10 with Regenerator seems like it has a lot more value. So that's a temporary buff. You're not going to be able to kill that next turn. Invoking here is the right move. I think you definitely want to play the Moondreamer.
Yeah, that's what I would have done.
Double hits Asol. It's not terrible. Honestly, double hitting Asol's okay. Supernova is a massive hit here. Supernova's great. The other thing that he could think about is potentially doing the Scourge. He could play it this turn, pull the Fiora to the back of the line, and have 2 10/10 attackers. He takes the Scourge. I think he's gonna go all in and try to win this round. And the hard part is, I don't think Ryan can respond to it. I think Lucas wins this game. What's hard is that the only thing Ryan could do to stop this attack is after Lucas plays the Scourge, he would have to play another Zenith Blade onto Fiora, so Concerted Strike would take down the She Who Wanders. I wonder why he didn't go for the Scourge here. I feel like it makes a lot more sense to go for the Scourge and try to end the game. Because with the Scourge gives you +2/+2 to other allies and Overwhelm. So this doesn't really count as a blocker, and you pull Fiora to the end of it. It's also really curious that he chose to keep that card alive.
Well, I think if he hadn't, Lucas could have just attacked with 3 10/10s. Fiora could only block 1. He would have won there anyway.
Sure.
He needs to block.
Ooh, Concerted's huge here. That puts Fiora up to 3. I can see that, Jeff. I can see why you would do that. So at this point, Ooh, that is so risky to me.
Such unrefined.
That is so risky. Especially when Ryan has 5 mana left and one card. There's a good chance that Aesol dies there. There's also part of me that thinks that he was just scouting out his hand. If you look at his hand though, he has a discounted Sky's Descent. Ryan did draw a Bastion, which is kind of a nuts draw. And so he is going to be able to threaten either of those cards this turn. Yep, Bastion puts him up to 9. Or Xenoplay puts him up to 9. Bastion's going to put him up to 10. Yeah, Bastion's going to come down now. Yep, so Ryan plays Bastion. And then he's going to have 3 gems at burst speed that he can put Fiora up above 10 and swing in.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. I feel like the Scourge play would have won him the match earlier. It's hard to say. Too. It's hard to say for sure, but I'm not really sure how he would have lost there.
I agree. I think the Scourge play, you put it in, you challenge, and then you're attacking with 3 10-10s.
A beginner's guide to creation.
Well, 2 of those 10-10s would have been 12-12s, and they would have both had Overwhelm.
Yep.
Yeah. So Ryan wins 2 ways. He drops the Nexus down below 0, and he hits the Fiora proc. Crazy game 2. Could have been a lot different.
That was a crazy game too. That was a crazy one, man.
The double Bastion.
Yep.
The double Bastion.
That would hurt.
Would you like to Bastion my mentor?
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
All right, I'm gonna swap over to my TF deck.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, both of them are muted. If you're Lucas, you're looking at the TF deck, and you're thinking, She Who Wanders completely destroys that entire deck. The problem is, can you get it out in time? Lucas's last deck is more of a tempo deck, which honestly would be a good matchup. I think this is going to be the hardest deck for Ryan to get a win with. If Ryan can squeeze out a win here, I think he wins the set. I think he wins the whole thing. Not immediately drawing into anything super good. He does mulligan away and finds the Teemo, which is good. If you're Lucas, you're not happy that Teemo just popped out. Teemo really kind of makes this early matchup hard, and it also plants a lot of mushrooms in your deck. Although, ooh, interesting that he didn't go for Spacey Sketcher. Spacey Sketcher into the Challenger Snake would have been really, really powerful.
Armed and ready. More mushrooms.
He's really gambling that he can get this stuff out early. So Ryan's got a pretty solid hand. He's got a pretty good hand to set up to drawing more cards. I think he's going to want to get Trump Bump out, and then he's going to want to rummage to get a lot of cards in his hand.
I played against this deck when I played Ryan earlier in the semis, and this is a hard deck to play against. Ryan knows this deck really, really well. Made me sad.
There's also a lot of different ways that this deck can win. This deck has a lot of elusive pressure. It's got a lot of pressure from Twisted Fate, if he can find it. It constantly has a really large hand size, and it constantly has a lot of different things that it could do every single turn. So, we're going to see Targon Peak coming down. Stuff's going to start getting discounted. This doesn't help Ryan out at all. All of his cards are already very cheap. And honestly, if Lucas hits this She Who Wanders, the game might be done. At that point, almost all of Ryan's hand disappears. But he only has a couple turns to hit it before he's going to take too much damage via mushrooms. Because at this point, there are now 40 puff caps in in Lucas's deck. That's a lot of puff caps.
Yeah, it happened really fast.
So Lucas's goal is he wants to get a lot of cards out of his hand that he doesn't want to get discounted. So he wants to play Catalyst. He wants to play the Trickster. Strange to me that he went for the Messenger because it does pull another card into his hand. So at this point, he's probably playing the Otter. The Otter just puts another... interesting. Yeah, Ballistic Bot is going to get a lot of value. And if Ryan hits the card that makes that elusive, it's going to turn into a pretty significant threat. So he does hit the Tryndamere. Tryndamere coming down at this stage in the game is significant. That's a lot of damage. And it doesn't go away right away.
Yeah, Tryndamere is one of my least favorite cards to play against.
It's one that... Tryndamere is pretty easily countered by anything that can obliterate. But if you're not in Targon, you're going to have a hard time with that. And so even taking this block, that Tryndamere is now going to be a 9/9.
Yep, and he's still taking 6 damage.
Mm-hmm. So if you're Ryan, clock's ticking, your next attack is potentially your last, just because of Targon Peak being down, of big units coming down every single turn. If Lucas empties his hand, he's either getting She Who Wanders or Aesol next turn, which is massive. He also has a Teemo blocker. Looking at Ryan's hand, this is not something Lucas knows, but he's got no way to get rid of the Trickster. And so at this point, Teemo doesn't get to attack anymore. You could play the Zap Sprayfin on your next turn and look into an open. But at this point, Ryan can play both of those cards next turn. He's going to have 10 mana, and one of those cards is going to be discounted. You're going to see Ryan's hand get real small, even smaller than it already is, and everything on his board except for Teemo is going to vanish. It's kind of the nature of this Targon's Peak deck of being very feast or famine. When it hits and when you can reduce your hand size to something this small, it's so punishing. One thing that Ryan could have done differently there, you saw that Ryan just rummaged away a lot of his puff caps, right?
Mm-hmm.
Keeping a lot of units out of your hand is a good move against She Who Wanders. Because the problem is, as soon as that card comes down, all those units are going to go away. If you can rummage after the fact, you can replenish your hand and actually have some things to deal with that. If Ryan rummages now, he's going to be in a world of hurt. Drawing Twisted Fate's kind of good here, but at the same time, it's like... Goes for the gold card, hits Tryndamere for 2. Not sure what that accomplishes. I mean, getting a little bit of damage is nice. It's not like Ryan's attacking by any means, but this is what I was talking about. At this point, this is a massive swing. At this point, Ryan's draw is gone. At this point, the majority of his board is gone, and he is staring down 2 pretty big units, and Lucas still has 10 mana. Unless Lucas draws 12 puff caps right here, I don't really know a ton of what he can do.
Yeah, if you're Ryan, what do you just try to get as many puff caps down as you can?
You get puff caps. You probably play the puff caps that were in your hand before you attack, because then you double them.
Yeah, that's what I would have thought.
and then you ignition to also just push as much damage. Because at this point, you're hoping that he draws 9 puff caps, which with 82 puff caps in your deck is possible. But Aurelian Soul's flipped. At this point, Lucas can play whatever card comes into his hand basically for free. It's going to be how many puff caps does he draw right here?
It would be so gross to draw 9 puff caps.
Yep. Yeah, if Lucas gets to attack, the game's over. 1, 2. Oh, only 2 puff caps?
That is bad luck.
He also has a catalyst. Like this, at this point, the game's done. Yeah, everything's getting obliterated. Or anything with 3 or less power gets obliterated. You have the Scourge, and you have a catalyst. At this point, the game's done. This is the end of game 3. Ooh, wait. That doesn't really do a ton for you.
Prepared for anything.
A familiar face for you Runeterrans.
So that's, at that point, that's definitely the game. You see the Scourge come down, you can pull the 9-3 all the way to the end, you attack with everything else. You honestly don't really have to pull anything. This is just too much damage.
Can't spoil the surprise.
And so, yes, hard matchup. A couple things Ryan could have done differently. Saving those rummages and draw things until after those big cards hit. But outside of that, there's not a ton he could have done.
Sure. So do you think some of that's just unfamiliarity with She Who Wanders?
Yeah, I think some of it is not playing around a lot of the specific cards and not knowing what cards kind of make the game just basically stop being winnable. But this is Mr. Dr. Phil's tournament game potentially.
You had a lot of puff caps there. Got scared.
I didn't hit the RNG very well.
We were looking.
I should have waited to use She Wonders until you attack with Timo because I could have blocked it.
Yeah, you could have blocked it with the Trickster.
Yeah.
I figured that I was on a clock until you played that card, since all of my cards are less than 3 health or whatever, 4 power.
And so, Ryan, one of the things that we were talking about, and I think the one misplay that you made, is you were sitting on, I think, 2 puff caps and you were sitting on 2 rummages. You definitely should have waited until like either your board was more empty or the She Who Wander came down before cycling through to find more cards. Because you cycled and then a lot of the cards that you found got obliterated.
Gotcha.
But it was a good match. It was close. It was closer than I thought it was going to be for that match.
That was super close, yeah.
Did you think that that my Timo deck was going to get popped?
I did, just because anytime She Who Wanders gets slapped down against an elusive deck, the game just ends usually.
Pretty much.
So it's a hard matchup. I will say, like other than that one thing, you played it fairly well. Lucas did get a lot of good RNG, and the fact that he had 82 puff caps in his deck and he only drawed 2 was kind of like
that. Yep.
That was a little sus. All right.
Yeah, you only drew like 2 before that also when you had like 40. I'm like, oh.
All right, game 4, last game.
Swole Squirrel.
All right.
Lucas is playing Luluzed, and Ryan has the counterpick advantage. He's got to win with 2 decks. Good luck, have fun, boys. Make sure you definitely. Yep, there you go. Alrighty. Ryan's got the Fearsome deck. Now this matchup's kind of weird because Lucas isn't gonna have a lot of blockers, but if Lucas gets going faster, quicker, it's not even gonna matter. Neither one of them hitting a really good opening hand. Having the Flower Child to drop is pretty good.
Yeah, so this matchup feels just kind of like a race.
Yep, they're both racing. Ryan's deck is a little bit slower. It does have more options to finish if the game stretches on. Taking the Owl's a great pick here. It's a huge tempo play. Attacking with it's okay. Again, this is the most amount of damage. You want to see the owl hit for 4. That's like the only time you really want to play it. Zed here that's a big drop. Even with a Skitterer, you're still gonna see Zed get 2+2+1.
Guess we're going.
Ooh, he decides to buff the Flower Child instead. I guess that's a good move, because if you think about it, that's not the correct block here at all. You definitely want to get rid of this Flower Child, because this Flower Child's going to get big, and I think you want to stop the Zed level up. I don't think blocking picks here makes a ton of sense. Again, this idea of a race, if you fall that far behind that early. So Ryan makes the right block here. So Lucas actually has a pretty interesting option for this turn. He's got this interesting card called Out of the Way, making all of his temporary buffs permanent for the rest of the game. He will pass up like some tempo here, but he doesn't decide to go for it. Looks for Lulu. Lulu is going to flip next turn. He says, I'm going to take the damage. He's pretty confident that his next attack's going to be pretty big. Nonuple is okay here. It only really stops Glimpse. But this is going to be a lot of damage. This is going to be a pretty big hit.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on right now.
So if you see, this Pix is getting buffed up, or buffing Flower Child. Lulu is creating Zed to go up to a 4/4, which makes the Shadow a 4/4 as well. And you're blocking that. Ryan's still going down to 4 here. That's pretty big, especially the fact that all of Lucas's board is going to stay alive. He's going to
would you block Zed, or would you block the Flower Child?
I would block the Flower Child. I would 100% block the Flower Child here. Yeah, and this is really unfortunate because Nonuple is going to come in. Zed's going to flip regardless because the Living Shadow is going to get in no matter what. But blocking the Flower Child, 1, gets rid of a body, and 2, it prevents 1 more damage.
Yep.
So a little misplay here. And now Ryan's kind of wondering what can he do. And so next turn is turn 6. If Ryan would have held spell mana, he could have played Harrowing. Harrowing would have brought back not a ton of stuff. It would have brought back a Skitterer, Stygian Onlooker, Arachnoid Horror, I guess 2 Stygian Onlookers. But at this point, like this is hard to recover for. Lucas has all the tempo. He's also going to have Pix, barrier. Ryan can't really attack here. And he does go for Out of the Way. Doesn't do a ton. It makes stuff permanent, but at this point, tempo is so far in Ryan's corner, or in Lucas's corner. I will say this. Ryan does still have Skitterer mana. If Ryan skitters, the only blocker he's going to have is Zed. He also has a Pale Cascade. So he's going to be able to push a little bit of damage. So again, Zed's the only blocker. Let's say he blocks the Callista. That's still 5 damage. Plus Pale Cascade. Puts him down pretty low. I just don't think it matters a ton. Like, that's lethal. Zed's still a blocker. Ryan needs to do 4 damage, and he's 2 away right now. It's hard. I think this game was definitely winnable from Ryan's perspective. I think a couple of smarter blocks early would have gone a long way. But at this point with a board this big, there's not a ton you can do.
Yeah, because at this point, Lucas can just open attack and win, right?
Yeah.
Before this ends, I want it to be known I had Harrowing and I miscounted.
Hey, well played.
He's gone.
Yeah, he's okay. Yep. And that's the tournament. We have our first place winner. We have Lucas Lepeau. I do not have to pay for shipping for cookies. But it was a well fought series, 3-1. I think even looking at lineups, I think a lot of what Lucas brought were strong matchups into a lot of Ryan's decks. And especially in a best of 5 format, when there's a lot more counterpicking involved and you have to win with every deck, it becomes really difficult when you hit any kind of hard matchup. But overall, I guess first off, Lucas, anything to say? Any kind of do you need to thank your sponsor? Or?
I think my future sponsor, TSM, hope to do some great things with you in the future. But no, it's a lot of fun. Super fun to play against Ryan twice, and I was super nervous. I was not expecting the Fiora Taric deck to come first. That definitely threw me off. But when I won the first game, I think it just gave me the momentum that I needed to carry through. And my the peak deck definitely kind of hard counters is elusive one, which
yep.
I knew I had a pretty strong advantage there, but yeah, I had a really good hand in the last game and took it home.
Ryan, kind of looking at your tournament run, coming out of pools, you have managed to take down every competitor except for Lucas. I mean, in a way, that has to feel pretty good knowing that no other competitor was a challenge for you. But it's also a little bittersweet in the sense that there was one that you couldn't overcome even with 2 shots. What are your thoughts on your tournament run?
I would argue before Ryan answers that one competitor was at least a bit of a challenge to him.
Yep, I do have to, say in the semifinal match, my opponent did give up. It was a really good fight. It was a very close set, 3-2. But as far as playing against Lucas, yeah, I mean, I got 0-2'd coming out of the pool by Lucas, and so I knew it was going to be a tough match. But I'm just ready for the third round of this tournament where I don't make as many misplays. Hey, that's what I'm looking forward to.
We all make misplays. It's kind of a heartbreaking moment earlier in the tournament where something was perfectly calculated. But didn't quite pan out. It happens. It definitely happens.
It does.
So, Lucas, the question on everyone's mind, what flavor cookies do you want as your victory prize?
Chocolate chip.
Chocolate
Classic.
chip? The classic.
Yes, sir.
You heard it here first. Jeff, thanks for commentating with me through this. Any kind of thoughts on the tournament overall, your tournament run, how things went?
Not really. I really enjoy this. It's a pretty fun game. It's one that just like the last tournament afterwards, I'll probably play a little bit more than I was before for a little bit and then panic when we do round 3. So Shurima is coming up in February. We'll probably give it some time so it stays fresh. But I guess for everyone in here, thinking and looking towards the third round of this, is there any takeaways or any things that you would have done differently? Any things that you're kind of looking forward to round 3 when it comes to what decks you're going to bring, kind of strategies you're going to employ? Just kind of what are you looking forward to going into the third one, and what would you do differently?
Landmarks.
I mean, for me, that's an easy answer. I would know what cards were being played against me.
I think one thing, ban the peak deck more.
So
that was a good deck.
It was kind of weird. Like, I feel like bans are in a fairly appropriate place right now. Looking at the first tournament, Lucas and I were the only person who the bans applied to. In the first tournament, Lucas, you kind of underperformed what your seed thought was going to be.
I did.
And in this tournament, I underperformed. I think that's one of the good things about this tournament is it feels like regardless of what rank you are in this game and regardless of experience, anything could happen. Like, regardless of where your seed is, regardless of how you done in the past, any person could end up top 3, top 2. Do you think that bans are in a good spot going into the third tournament? Would you increase the amount of bans? What are your thoughts on the matter?
I think bans are in a good spot. I think it's a good balance for like how many cards are available. And like you said, with the seeding doesn't matter at all. Like, I mean, earlier, when I played against Alex in the semifinals, I went game 5, and it was super, super close. He basically blew me out 2 games, and it got really tense. And same thing with Nate in pools. It was 2-1. It was super, super close. So, anything could happen. And just the different kinds of decks you just don't expect to see. Like when I played against Alex, he has a Mage Seeker deck, and I just did not see that coming at all. And I had no way around to play around Detain. And that was super, super hard because I don't have Deny. Nopify doesn't do jack against it. So it made it really hard.
The one thing I noticed when it comes to bans, especially looking at kind of like what we can't play with, I don't know if you've noticed this, but hard removal is very hard to come by.
That is so true.
Hard removal is very difficult to come by. And so I think if I were to look forward and kind of looking at my past matches, a lot of the reasons I lost the matches was I was unable to stop the opponent's game plan or really interact with it at all. It was either I got my game plan off first or my opponent did.
Yeah.
And so I think even looking into a couple of different methods of removal, potentially looking at more challenger concepts or more just other things that can kind of interact with your opponent is going to be what I'm going to be looking at. But overall, well fought. It was a great tournament, guys. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to cut the VOD there. For those of you who are watching this YouTube VOD, thanks for sticking with us, and we will see you next time.